be said that geographical discoveries played an extremely important role in the development of human civilization. Not inferior to the industrial revolutions, the explosion of expeditions laid the foundation for many major turning points in global economy, politics, and culture. However, behind that glory, things were not always as beautiful as people imagined. Unlike Columbus's crew who discovered America, or Captain Magellan who circumnavigated the world, many journeys never returned. Moreover, some expeditions left behind countless horrifying mysteries, strange things that remained unexplained for centuries. Among such expeditions, the most famous and perhaps the most horrifying was John Franklin's expedition. Setting out with the hope of completing the missing pieces on the world map. The expedition of over 140 people disappeared without a single piece of news. Then, more than 150 years later, it was referred to as a deadly expedition, where people suffered pain, illness, hunger, and even resorted to cannibalism to survive. What happened to John Franklin's expedition? Why did they have to do such things? Is there something we still don't know? Greetings to all viewers watching the Primitive Universe video. In the next 30 minutes, we will explore the truth about John Franklin's mysterious expedition together. I hope you are ready to fully enjoy today's content. Time is turning back to 1845. Two ships are moving into the dark and cold waters of northern Canada. They're carrying out an extremely important mission. At sea, they encountered two other whaling ships preparing to set sail. The sailors waved to each other friendly and chatted cheerfully. But that was also the last time people saw the two expedition ships and their crew alive. For over a century, the mystery of the disappearance of the expedition led by John Franklin puzzled many researchers. But in recent decades, many important clues have gradually been discovered. What happened to the expedition was more terrible and horrifying than anything people could imagine. And surely you are also wondering what happened to John Franklin's lost expedition. In the 1800s, if you lived in Europe around this time, you would definitely feel the strong breath of a new era approaching. In just a few short decades, everything had completely changed. The era of geographical discoveries and the end of the Napoleonic Wars opened up a new future. The first industrial revolution was also bringing humanity to a scale we had never imagined before. For the first time, we had an almost complete world map. But to complete it, we needed the final pieces. One of those pieces was right here, the Northwest Passage in North America. At this time, the British Empire and many other world powers were rapidly expanding their influence through promoting trade. British merchant ships appeared densely in every ocean worldwide. However, they felt that was still not enough. They wanted to boost the exchange of goods even more by increasing the volume of goods circulating on the oceans. But this seemed relatively difficult because the natural shape of America, like a barrier, blocked the route. Each merchant ship journey was extremely long and arduous. They needed a route through America to reach the Pacific Ocean on the other side. Building a canal like the Panama Canal was unimaginable with the science and technology of that time. If you wanted to travel from England to Japan, you would have to go around South America or around Africa, then to Southeast Asia to reach the destination. Such routes were too long and too dangerous. Therefore, people hoped to find a route through the cold territory of northern Canada to solve this problem. In reality, the mission was almost impossible. However, the fame from completing an important missing piece on the world map still made many people willing to devote their hearts and efforts. One of those people was John Barrow, Secretary of the British Admiralty. Although 81 years old, he still considered this his last chance to achieve another glorious achievement before retiring. Barrow ordered the planning of an expedition. He began proposing talented commanders who could carry out the mission to the Navy Department. However, his choices all seemed unfeasible. Here we have two candidates, William Perry and Jim Ross. One was too weary of trips to the Arctic. The other did not want to leave his family due to his wife's demands. A third choice, Francis Crozier, was overlooked by the Navy Department due to his humble origins. A fourth choice, James Fitzgibbon, was also unsuitable because he was too young and lacked experience to lead such a major mission. However, they eventually found the most suitable candidate, Sir John Franklin. If considering past achievements, Franklin could not be considered an outstanding explorer. He had even caused half the crew to perish. The survivors had to eat leather to avoid starvation. Franklin luckily returned, but also had to eat his own boots. Despite that, he was still beloved by everyone. The crew members described Franklin as a kind old father figure. Sometimes he even imparted valuable experiences to them, and especially always tried his best to ensure the safety of all members. Therefore, John Franklin would be the captain of this mission. The expedition would also include Francis Crozier and James Fitzgibbon as deputy captain and advisor. This mission was extremely important, capable of bringing immense benefits to the mighty British Empire if successful. Thus, the authorities spared no expense in investing in the journey. The expedition would have the largest and most advanced ships of the time. The first ship was named HMS Erebus, originally a Hecla-class military vessel. Built by the Royal Navy at the Pembroke shipyard in 1826. Terror, the second ship, was slightly smaller but also a warship produced in 1813. Both would be reinforced with multiple protective layers to withstand collisions while penetrating the thick northern ice. Double thick wooden hulls, sturdy iron plates at the bow, and a new heating system, ensuring the main structure had as little risk as possible. But most notable was an upgrade that no Royal Navy ship had ever had before. An upgrade showcasing the power of science and technology, named the steam engine. The propellers were powered by a large steam locomotive, converted from railway engine use. Even without wind, the two ships would continue their journey. But here, there was a relatively difficult problem. The steam engines would evaporate about a ton of fresh water per hour. How could a ship carry enough of that water to operate? Scientists solved this by developing distillation technology, turning salt water into fresh water. The team would also bring one of the first portable cameras of the daguerreotype type to record important moments. And an insulated diving suit if needed to go underwater and remove ice out of the propellers. Today, going to the Arctic is very easy. People even organize tours for visitors from everywhere to sightsee. But in the 1800s, going to the Arctic held many dangers, no less than us entering space. In the expedition, only 6 out of 24 officers had been to the polar region before. For those coming here for the first time, the feeling might be like stepping onto another planet. The compass completely did not work. The world experienced many consecutive months without daytime or without nighttime. Most of the year, the ocean was frozen, cold, and barren. All you could see was white snow stretching to the horizon. However, everyone understood that and they were willing to take the risk. On May 19, 1845, the Erebus and Terror moved to Greenhithe in East London to prepare for departure on the expedition. On board were all 134 officers and crew members, a cat, a dog named Daphne, plus a monkey named Jacko, a gift from Franklin's grandmother. Along with that, they carried 2 tons of tobacco, 7,500 liters of alcohol, 12,000 books, clothing, various tools, and 16,000 canned goods. During the journey, Erebus and Terror would stop at Stromness, Scotland. Then with 2 more ships carrying supplies, they crossed the Atlantic, stopping at the Whale Islands, west of Greenland. There, the 2 other ships would supply Terror and Erebus with many essential provisions before leaving the expedition to return home. During their stay on the islands, 5 expedition members encountered health issues and were forced to return with the 2 transport ships. Before leaving the Whale Islands, members took time to write letters to their families and enjoy the last warmth from the sunlight. In those letters, we learned much about the past days of the entire crew. The scientists began their work right after leaving Scotland. Weather and natural phenomena were all monitored. Captain Franklin strictly prohibited leaning on and damaging the ship's masts. Overall, everyone was very positive and excited about the upcoming challenges. They prepared to embark on the most adventurous journey of their lives, etching their names into human history forever. On August 12, 1845, the expedition left the Whale Islands with 129 people. They encountered 2 whaling ships in Baffin Bay, a detail we mentioned at the beginning of the video. For some mysterious reason, the entire expedition along with the 2 ships disappeared without a trace. It took about 150 years, with hundreds of extremely difficult searches, for people to partially explain what really happened. Debates even continue to this day, but basically, we have much to discuss. So what really happened? In fact, even before it began, this journey was assessed by many as having more bad than good omens. First, as everyone knows, even in summer, most sea routes in the Arctic Circle are covered by ice and snow. The ships had to push icebergs aside along their path, so collisions were unavoidable. If collisions occurred too frequently at high speed, they would damage the ship's bow even though it had been reinforced. This could be considered the first nail hammered into the explorer's coffin. Not stopping there, the steam engines equipped on both ships could only generate about 25 horsepower. This power gave them a speed of less than 4 knots per hour. Franklin and his men would have to endure the harsh conditions here for a very long time. With such limitations, the 2 expedition ships only traveled about 800 kilometers in icy waters, circling around Cornwallis Island before returning to Beechey Island and waiting for winter to pass. Although they couldn't find a route through America on the first attempt, this was still an incredibly impressive progress. From this route, they would begin further journeys in subsequent years. Throughout the winter, Franklin's expedition took shelter in a small bay between Beechey Island and Eden Island, to avoid large icebergs or snowstorms. Above, the sails were lowered, making way for a huge canvas tent, occupying most of the deck space. This provided everyone with living space while avoiding unfavorable weather conditions outside. Despite being very careful, 3 crew members passed away and were buried on Beechey Island. Many believe they died from pneumonia. But it seems that wasn't the only cause. Something else besides the cold weather had killed them. The second nail in the expedition's coffin gradually revealed itself. This nail involved the food and drink they had consumed during those winter months. The 16,000 cans of food they brought on the expedition were truly poor quality products. They were prepared hastily and sealed by unskilled workers. Improper sealing caused their cans to be incompletely cooked or poorly preserved. Lead toxicity from the sealing process, bacteria from spoiled food, plus mold in the canned goods were silently taking the lives of many people. Hair and tissue samples obtained in 1984 confirmed. The 3 bodies buried on Beechey Island had abnormally high lead levels. But clearly, even though the food cans were contaminated with lead, it's unlikely they caused such severe poisoning. So where did it come from? The surprising answer came from the desalination device that turns seawater into fresh water. They should never have been allowed to use that fresh water for drinking, because the device's lead pipes were very easily corroded by exposed to sea salt. This amount of lead is many times higher than the lead content in canned food. Another hypothesis explaining the unusually high lead levels is the severely deficient diet of the expedition members. The nutritional deficiency caused the body to start using its own bone nutrients to compensate, inadvertently releasing more lead into the bloodstream. The combination of conditions including contaminated food, water lead poisoning, and nutritional deficiencies made the crew's health worse than ever before. Consequently, immunity declined, lymph node inflammation, and a series of other pathologies gradually developed. Worse yet, 5 people who returned from the Whale Islands earlier were found to have tuberculosis. Meaning that on the 2 expedition ships, tuberculosis had very likely spread widely as well. But regardless, it was expected that when winter passed, the expedition would once again set sail southward to the place called King William Island. Here Franklin had to make a choice. If heading east of the island, he could lead the entire crew to the southern seas, opening up more discoveries. The second option was to go west, exactly as the original purpose of returning. After careful consideration, going west seemed much less risky. Franklin thought so too and decided to take this path. But he didn't know that he had inadvertently led the entire crew into a trap. The west of King William Island is like a funnel sucking icebergs into a narrow area. When the crew reached this area, winter also began to arrive, with icebergs appearing increasingly more. This left them trapped among the islands. The expedition had entered one of the world's densest iceberg flows and had no chance to correct their previous mistake. They were tightly locked in by those icebergs and could no longer move. Now there was only one way. They had to survive this winter and wait for the ice to melt. Meanwhile back home, Mrs. Franklin grew increasingly worried with no news from her husband. Although it was predicted that the expedition would spend a winter in the Arctic Circle. But now it was already the second winter. She began making inquiries and demanded that the Admiralty do something. But the Admiralty believed everything was fine. They would plan a rescue immediately if they felt it was truly necessary. Mrs. Franklin could not accept this. She directly appealed to the British public for help. And fortunately, she was acquainted with a friend named Charles Dickens, the most famous writer in Britain at the time. Thanks to Charles's reputation, the hope of finding their loved ones was much higher. The expedition actually desperately needed rescue, but they themselves didn't even realize it. During the first winter and even the second winter, no one paid attention to the dangers from food or water sources. In May 1847, 8 members of the expedition left the ship and brought letters to King William Island, so that if a rescue team was sent, they would see them and report home. The letter contained the location where the 2 ships were wintering and a set of precise coordinates. There was also much information about the stay at Beechey Island and the journey around Cornwallis Island. Finally, the letter still emphasized that everything was fine. The handwriting on the letter was believed to be that of Officer Fitzjames. But the letters were placed in high stone cairns to keep them safe from harsh weather. However, everything was about to change. They were truly not as fine as in the letter. The expedition intended to leave during early summer when winter hadn't fully ended. That's why they left the letters early. But that year, the Arctic had an unusually cold summer, much colder than other years. For 3 months, including June, July, and August, the ice barely melted at all. Erebus and all its crew remained trapped in the ice. Records even noted that the period from 1845 to 1859 was the peak of 50 years of unusual cold in the previous thousands of years. Terror was smaller and almost buried by snow and ice. Finally, the crew moved to live on Erebus. That's good too, they could share warmth and the remaining food. Terror was converted into a cold storage warehouse. But on June 11, 1847, Captain Franklin suddenly passed away. By then, the doctors and scientists on board clearly recognized the symptoms of illness and food poisoning. Even so, they couldn't prevent it at this point because there was no alternative food. You need to know that no edible plants grow in this Arctic environment. And hunting wild animals was too dangerous. The danger didn't come from their ferocity, but from something else. Seals and polar bears, common animals around here, all carry type E botulinum, the main toxin related to local food in the Arctic. This is the only toxin strain that can survive at such cold temperatures. The native Inuit have adapted over thousands of years and their genes can resist it. But for the crew members, that was impossible. A piece of improperly cooked meat could also be a death sentence in agony. Another winter passed, by the third winter between 1847 and 1848. No news from the expedition had been sent back to the country. The Navy Department also sensed something was wrong and they needed to act immediately. They could no longer ignore the public's strong opposition. In early 1848, a rescue team was sent ahead. Among the participants was James Ross, who had missed the chance to lead the expedition due to family requests. After learning the expedition was missing, he decided to board the SMS Enterprise to search for his friend Francis Crozier. The Navy Department offered a £20,000 reward to anyone who completed the mission. That amount is equivalent to about $2.5 million today. £10,000 would be the amount for providing useful information supporting the rescue. By April 1848, the expedition knew they had no other choice. Food was gradually running out and only enough to count by days. The ship was stuck in ice. If they wanted to leave here, they could only walk. So on April 25th, they returned to King William Island and left another message by writing in the margin of the first letter. Its contents stated that Sir John Franklin had died along with 9 officers and 15 crew members. The 105 survivors under Crozier's command decided to abandon ship to walk 240 kilometers in search of survival. They would try to reach the back river and use boats to cross to the nearest research station. After a long year and 7 months, the expedition finally took action. But given the current situation, it seemed everyone was almost desperate. Many of them couldn't withstand the harsh climate, high mental stress, and weak physical health after long periods living in terrible conditions. Over 20 bodies of Erebus crew members found on King William Island's coast showed the group had no choice but to leave weak individuals behind to seek survival chances. Running to the nearest trading post, hundreds of kilometers from the island, carrying immobile people was no different from suicide. Instead of carrying sick people, they chose to bring small lifeboats along and pull them across the ice. These small boats were loaded with food and necessary supplies, each estimated to transport over 3 tons of goods. Now in the pain of illness, the bone-chilling cold of the Arctic, they pulled the boats to despair. And of course, in a crowd, maintaining order was extremely difficult. Many individuals left their group to follow paths they believed were right. In fact, bodies were found in over 10 different locations. Some even returned to the ship because they couldn't keep up with others. In the summer of 1848, food ran out as expected. Nevertheless, over 150 years later, many unopened food cans were still found on the shipwreck. It's possible the expedition members realized the danger from this food and chose to leave without using it. Around July 1849, it was speculated that Erebus had been freed from the thick ice because there was information that the Inuit claimed to have seen a 3-masted ship offshore. A year later, a group of Inuit claimed to have found an abandoned ship still stuck in ice and snow. S stove was still burning, some crew members. Moreover, the Inuit encountered a group of explorers lost in the snow. Strangely, only one of them appeared to be on the verge of starvation. The others were relatively stable in health. He was the only one who refused to eat his companion's flesh to survive. The Inuit took them all to their dwelling and cared for them very attentively. During that time, one person died from illness before the others recovered enough health to continue their journey. In late August, a rescue team arrived at Beechey Island. They confirmed that the expedition had indeed encountered misfortune. In 1850, at least 11 ships participated in the search for the expedition. That same year, the Inuit again reported seeing a total of 40 different men heading south. But a year later, reports only mentioned seeing a few scattered individuals without dragging any supplies behind. It's believed that most of them died from hunger or severe infections. The Inuit accounts often lacked clarity, so rescue teams couldn't obtain truly valuable information. Some groups reported seeing a grave with over 30 bodies, along with evidence showing they had been cut up and used as food by their companions. But these claims were quickly dismissed due to lack of verifiable evidence. The Inuit testimonies were thus ignored for over 100 years. Later, historians began reviewing reports and cross-referencing with their testimonies. They were astonished to realize they had overlooked an important detail. The Inuit weren't completely accurate, but in key details, their testimonies were remarkably consistent. The contradictions in meaning likely came from translation issues rather than the nature of the information. Starting in 1888, the first official search and rescue team found the final reports from Erebus and Terra. 10 years later, in 1869, another explorer encountered a group of Inuit during his expedition. They claimed to have met several members of Franklin's expedition. However, they couldn't provide much food for those men as they had to feed their own families, so they had to let the sailors continue through the snow. Finally, not until 1993, nearly 150 years after the search began, was the ultimate fate of the expedition determined. All details regarding cannibalism mentioned by the Inuit turned out to be true. Cuts on the bones of the found bodies proved they had been deliberately separated. Even the survivors tried to break the largest bones to extract marrow. Today, we don't know what truly happened to the remainder. The small groups heading south will probably never be found. However, we can at least understand what happened. Because in 2014, the wreck of Erebus was found in Crampton Bay in very well-preserved condition. 2 years later, Terra was also found. Many new exploration and investigation plans were made, but basically no progress has been made. Despite the dangers, humanity has never decided to stop. Many expeditions are still being conducted, and many of them meet tragic ends no less than John Franklin's expedition. For example, the expedition we're about to mention next. In 1897, 3 explorers decided to go to the Arctic by balloon, but they never reached their destination. Their disappearance became one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in Arctic exploration history. Leading this bold expedition was Swedish engineer Solomon August André. According to him, the hydrogen balloon would move faster and provide a wider view than other exploration methods. André's critics argued that traveling by balloon was impractical, as there was absolutely no way to control temperature and flight direction. Therefore, failure was inevitable. Although many considered him reckless, André's plan impressed King Oscar II of Sweden. On July 11, 1897, after many delays, André and his teammate Nils Strindberg, along with Knut Frankel, took off from Danes Island in Spitsbergen on the balloon Ornen. The balloon rose high and was visible for about an hour, then gradually flew away towards the northeast. That was the last time the 3 men were seen alive. No news was ever received. Their fate became a huge question mark. Many expeditions were sent but found no trace. More than 3 decades later, the mystery gradually unfolded. In August 1930, a group of Norwegian scientists studying glaciers on an expedition ship. They took advantage of the warm summer to land on Beechey Island. While exploring the island, they unexpectedly found traces of a small wooden boat. André. After further exploration, the research team found the bodies of 3 people along with their diaries, logbooks, cameras, and film rolls. The bodies of the 3 were brought back to Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, for cremation and burial. The diaries and photographs helped clarify what happened to the team after takeoff in July 1897. The balloon hovered in the air for nearly 3 days and drifted northeast. However, the journey quickly encountered obstacles. The wind direction changed, pushing the balloon westward on July 12, 1897. as hydrogen escaped from the balloon while it hovered at low altitude, along with fog and thick ice forming on the balloon's surface, causing it to gradually descend. To continue hovering, Andre and his companions discarded supplies and some equipment but were unsuccessful, as the balloon bounced on the ground in intervals of about 50 meters. On July 14th of that year, the team decided to jump from the vehicle and abandon the mission when they were 480 kilometers from the polar region. The three continued trying to move to safety, but by mid-September of that year, temperatures gradually dropped, leaving them no choice but to stay put. They built a shelter from ice blocks, sailcloth, and wood from the balloon. In early October, moving ice pushed them to White Island. And on October 8th, as bad weather approached, Andre wrote his final diary entry. We no longer have the incredible geographical discoveries like those of a few centuries ago. Perhaps those people did not truly achieve their dream of being recorded in history in the way they desired. But they will certainly forever be remembered as the bravest, contributing to the progress of human civilization. So we have reached the end of today's 30-minute video. What did you feel? Was it the cruelty of nature, the difficulty of the struggle for survival, or the courage of those who dared to think and dared to go? Please leave all feedback in the comments section of this video. And now, the storytelling is over. Goodbye and see you in the next videos. Wishing everyone a good day. Subscribe to the Dark Truth Files channel to watch the latest videos.